you can think of the economic impact coming into the city. So we did a COVEC report. Additional FPOS transactions in the region was 12 million for that period. McDonald's was the highest turnover in the country. I think we still hold the record. Burger King ran out of cups. BP ran out of pies, ran out of petrol at one stage. We were told a $48 million economic impact to the Gisborne region from Rhythm and Vines.
Welcome to Checks and Balances, brought to you by Partners Life. I'm Michael Vincent. This is James Blair. And today we've got Hamish Pinkham, co-founder of Rhythm and Vines, here to talk to us about the financials of New Zealand's largest music festival.
We're back in your life. Hamish, welcome to the pod.
Good morning, team.
I am so pumped for this one.
I know, I got through about 4,000 words in that introduction, so I'm feeling good.
Yeah, it's not all about you, Mike. It's about Hamish. So, Hamish, today's really cool. So we've spoken to like CEOs of banks, economists. We talk about the housing market to death. This is a really cool kind of blend where, you know, a lot of people have an R&V story, but talking about the financial side and the things that are all happening in the background that you really don't think about.
Yeah, no, happy to open the curtain and share a bit about our industry and some of the stories and things that have made our business successful and a brand that continues today, 22 years later.
Yeah.
22 years.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and I think that's the really big piece, right? Like Rhythm and Vines is like an iconic brand in New Zealand, but everything has to start somewhere. So I'm really keen for you to take us back to the start of, so 2003 was the first festival. Take us back to those early days where, you know, the idea started and you were like, let's give this thing a go.
Yeah, well, it takes me back to Otago University where I was studying with my co-founders, and quite a social place, Otago, and you got people from all over the country. My parents were living in Thailand at the time, so I spent a couple of summers over there and got to experience a bit of the party culture in Koh Phangan and Koh Samui and, you know, the full moon raves. And as a, 20-year-old young Kiwi, it was quite inspirational to see, you know, the music, see the lights and see the party vibe. And I guess at the time in New Zealand, we had nothing like that. We had, you know, the remnants of The Gathering, which was quite a famous New Year's rave. But the early 2000s, the New Year's summer festival scene was just dormant. Mates used to go to Taupo, to Batches.
Whangamata, hang out by the surf club.
Exactly, throw some bottles.
Get carted off,
The Central Otago, Wanaka, Queenstown was quite a destination, but there was no real festival scene. And so I was quite inspired from those trips to Thailand to, think about how we could bring a bit of that to the country. I was playing in a little covers band with a couple of mates down in Otago, and we used to run the Wednesday nights at the Captain Cook.
Yeah.
And so
The Cook. Sends me back. I'm a Scarfie as well.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, you probably can't
was
tell from this corporate vibe now, but the Cook, how good.
It was quite an iconic, student hangout, and I guess it was those early days of the hustle mentality, and how could we get a job where we'd do something we love. And friends and I formed this band, Blackbird, and we proposed to the Captain Cook that we'd play on a Wednesday night. We'd bring all our friends, and for a $400 fee and a bar tab, we got our first taste of the music industry. And it would be, putting a few flyers up around campus and inviting our mates down. And the Cook were really happy with our work, and soon the place was full on a Wednesday night, and we had a bit of a following. We were just playing songs like Ben Harper and Pearl Jam and the Beatles, and we were really thinking what we could do next with our band and with our audience. And it was around the time that some of the friends were leaving university. It was probably after the third and fourth year actually, and Tom Gibson, my friend, said, let's try and organise an end-of-year party to get all our mates together. And I thought it would be great for our band to play and maybe some other friends to DJ, and could really extend our promoting skills to putting on a bigger party. It was still pretty small time in terms of numbers and goals. Like we had a vision to maybe pass a hat around and get $100 off everyone. And with that money, we could maybe go to someone like Dave Dobbin to perform at someone's batch. And then we hadn't thought about things like consents or where people would stay or booze. But we had the vision of 100 mates in a summer location
Yeah.
I was flatting with Andrew Witters, a Gisborne lad, and he was a bit of an entrepreneur himself, and he had these amazing summer businesses selling fruit and veggies in Gisborne, and he had a bit of pocket money, and he was always very supportive of the band and our friend group. So we said to him, imagine having all our friends at your vineyard up in Gisborne to have this end of year party.
How good.
Next thing you know, we were writing to his father to ask permission. We still didn't have a name or any funding to how we would get this party off the ground. But Dean Witters soon wrote back and said, we'd love to hear your idea in person. I'd like to fly you and Tom up to Gisborne to propose and discuss this scarfy party. We came up with the idea, the name Rhythm and Vines on the plane on the way up there, and we rolled into Mr. Witters' office. It was a bit like the Dragon's Den sitting down. He was a very renowned entrepreneur at the time and had run a successful fruit and veggie processing business in Gisborne, Sedenco. So to have his support of the first Rhythm and Vines and setting up a company, setting up some budgets, mentoring us, we were able to kind of push play on that first year.
Awesome. And looking back on that first year, what did it do in terms of like how many tickets did you sell?
Yeah, so we had that vision of the 100 mates, but once we started putting the numbers together, we realised that we wouldn't be able to cover our costs and potentially there was a bigger market. Some pretty crude budgeting at the start. I think I was on the music side of things, so I think we had around $20,000 for the musicians, and that included one of the headliners, Black Seeds. One of the first lessons I learned from Mr. Witters was action. And that very first meeting when we put the budgets together, he said, get on the phone and call the Black Seeds and see if they're available and what they need. Called them up, got a nominal fee from them, and Dean said, ring them back, offer them $2,000 more and lock them in. And so we were able to lock in our headliner in June that year.
Do you
from action? Yep.
Yeah, sorry. Do you think back on like having that mentorship early on? Where do you think you'd be now if you didn't have that operations business?
Yeah,
support?
I think you need that. I think it's one of the most important things we had in those early years is those father figures. Literally, Andrew's father had the business experience. I remember that first weekend we had with Dean, he got us out of bed at 6 a.m. and had the spreadsheet on the projector and ran us through the inner workings of a budget, how many tickets you need to sell to pay for these costs. If you've got 20,000 on production, you got 20,000 on artists, what's your marketing spend?
Yeah.
How much sponsorship are you looking at? A per head, spend at the bar, and all these numbers, and putting it into a structure was something quite new to us at that level. Also had my father Ross, who was a detective in Hawke's Bay, and having his mentorship in terms of approaching the police.
Yep.
We went to an alcohol licensing hearing, how we engaged with the council, and also how we worked through a critical path of jobs. So having a couple of mentors from the early days, coupled with our unbridled passion and our vision, and
a bit of naivety.
Yeah.
You need a bit of naivety, right?
Yeah, you do, and almost that, unrealistic expectations and how it can be achieved. And I remember talking to a few naysayers and groups of friends saying, you're never going to pull this off. I don't think people attend, but in our mind's eye, we had the vision of this event, and we could see all our friends on this hillside, and having that encouragement in your own head, I think, is one of the most important parts of the whole recipe.
Yeah. And then so year one, how many people came?
So year one, we were in December twiddling our thumbs, and Mr. Witters was freaking out saying, guys, you've sold me the dream. We've only sold 80 tickets.
Oh, no.
And we had a bit of a run rate going. And we were calling all our friends around the country, and these are mates in Christchurch, friends in Auckland, and through to, school friends in Hawke's Bay. And we were rallying around saying, are you guys coming? And they're like, no, we're coming. And any promoter knows that people leave things to the last minute in New Zealand. So the run rate was pretty slow. You're at 80, 100. But, the weeks before Christmas, it ramped up.
Yeah.
And day of the event, we sold 800 tickets on paper. When the event door opened, we'd probably had another 1,000 people attend in various forms through comp tickets, jumping fences.
Yeah.
Last
wandering
in. And it turned into this big, iconic farm dance party. anyone was at that first Rhythm and Vines will still recall it was one of the most classic Kiwiana yarns. You got the Black Seeds playing. You've got people walking around with bottles of wine. We had a cash bar.
Yeah.
We had backpackers working. It was, it was a real celebration of that era, 2003, under that bright blue Gisborne sky.
Awesome.
And I think gave us that encouragement for what was only really going to be a 1 year project to, hey, we could do this again, and maybe next year everyone will come back with a couple of friends in tow. Maybe now we can get a bigger band. And we approached Salmonella Dub, who were big cult heroes in Otago, and they committed early, and the reputation of Rhythm and Vines was starting to build around the country, and that's when we thought maybe this is a serious venture that we can kind of build into something sustainable.
And when was that moment where you're like, I think we've got something here? Was that when midnight struck at the first one and you're like, lads, let's do this forever? Or was it you kind of got through the first one and then we're like, we think we've got something here, let's continue to build off the back
I
of it?
think coming out of that first year we were in a bit of debt as well, and we were kind of encouraged or almost forced to continue the project because
You got to pay this off.
we've got to pay the bills. And I think the bar was probably run looser than we'd expected, and I even put my hand up saying at times we were back there getting drinks for friends, and people that had worked on the festival had bar tabs that were exploited. There was no real handle on the finances at that stage.
Yeah.
We also had a venue fee, which we kind of forgot to take into account with Waiheka Estate. And anyone that's run a big party, it's certainly, once you're in the middle of it, it's a lot of fun, and then it comes crashing down the next day when you got to pay some bills. So we went back to uni with a $5,000 debt hanging over our heads.
So you lost money on the first.
Lost money.
And you were conveniently forgot that one, hoping maybe they'll write this one off.
Yeah. So you lost money on the first concert and you were like, let's do this again.
Let's do it again. And we went back to uni saying word was getting around. And, I think that was my final year of varsity, and I was... I didn't really have the passion for joining one of the big law firms. I was more keen to join one of the big music companies like MTV or Universal. And I thought having this Rhythm and Vines project on my CV would give me a good chance of getting in the door at something like that. So building the Rhythm and Vines company, and the next year we brought on an event manager to help us and help mentor us, because the delivery of this project was getting bigger and bigger. And that second year was one of the years that the festival was a little bit out of hand. We had glass bottles throughout the venue because we wanted it to be quite a premium offering.
Yeah.
At the time, there were some New Year's festivals in places like Whangamata and up north in Paihia, and it was quite tacky and cheesy, and it was like export gold beach balls and bucket hats, and we wanted to be we wanted to be the antithesis of that. We wanted to almost be like a wine and food festival where girls would dress up.
Yep.
Guys were looking nice, even like in a summer shirt. We wanted to have cold Heineken bottles, and we wanted it to be civilized. That wasn't always the case when you get 5,000 young New Zealanders in one vineyard location.
It's a good time though.
And one of the other things with the concept was we were quite fortunate to get a 24-hour liquor license. When we had the event at Waiheka Estate, it was under a cellar door wine tasting license. So A, we were able to get trading through with the local police and get support, but B, we actually had to have we had a 24-hour license, so we were able to sell booze right through till midday the next day. So it turned into this pretty unruly party right through after sunrise, right through to the early morning rays of the 1st of January. People still drinking bottles of wine on the hill. And a few safety issues thinking back now. I think we ran out of water at one stage, people getting cut glass. It was, some early learnings of event management. So we were able to bring on some event managers in those early years as our first, employees and mentors, because we were only 20, 21 at that stage. So there was lots to learn.
Yeah, I guess at that stage, striking a balance between saying, hey, I want to have an amazing party with my mates, and we need to make this a business that is viable and people aren't going to get hurt, and we can keep going the next year and the cops aren't going to be knocking on the door, is probably a bit of a strange kind of balance to strike.
Yeah, and it's something we always push the envelope those first few years. We had a vision for the event, and we did set some goals in the early years of what we were trying to achieve, and one of the main points was to be a safe and sustainable event for young Kiwis. And we didn't want parents to have any fear with sending their kids down to Rhythm and Vines. And I think we're really proud of that's something we've been able to achieve, is it continues to this day to be a really safe event for young New Zealanders. And our team go through lots of protocols and work closely with the authorities to ensure that reputation continues.
Yeah, it's I've been to 3 or 4. How many have you been to?
3.
It's a rite of passage.
It is.
Right?
It is.
Like that drive to Gisborne, boy, she's a long drive down. Boy, she's a longer drive back. Yeah.
The drive back is it's a punishing one, eh? Yeah. And you're trying to get out before everybody else get out.
Yeah. You're just like because you're in a tent generally, and that sun hits very early in the morning, and you just wake up. You're like, I've got to get out of here.
I want to be home.
Yeah,
but you're right. It is a Kiwi institution, and I think that's one reason we've stuck with it, because we've been able to build something quite world class here on New Zealand shores. And I remember being quite inspired by Peter Jackson when I was coming out of university, because he was this Kiwi who was running a world class production here in New Zealand, and no one had done that before. And even the Big Day Out, which was the leading festival at the time, was an Australian-owned company. But to create something at that level in New Zealand by Kiwis, for Kiwis, with local talent is something that we're really proud of.
Well, let's talk about that. What do you think? I mean, it's been more than 2 decades. A lot of festivals have come, a lot of festivals have gone. I'm sure you've had a lot of people pitching, mate, I got this idea. What do you reckon makes Rhythm and Vines different? And it's had all the success that it's had?
Yeah, good question. I think that sense of occasion is something that can't be taken away from us. Kiwis love New Year's. They love that time of year. It's when you kind of drop all your responsibilities and you jump in a car with your mates and let your hair down. So you've got that captive market of Kiwis that want to do something. They come to Gisborne because of that reputation, but the venue is one thing that stands out. Artists and managers come to Rhythm and Vines and they say this is the best festival venue they've ever seen. Rolling hills, it's safe and secure, it's sheltered. You've got the natural aspects. It's like a Lord of the Rings, Jurassic Park themed venue. So that sets us apart. I think the team worked really hard to ensure the best event practices. We do exchanges with other festivals and bring in staff that have worked on leading festivals like Creamfields and Glastonbury. We send our staff to those festivals. Our team work on things like Coachella and EDC, and bringing those best practices back to the event on health and safety and artist liaison set us apart. The creative aspects change each year, and I think the programming team and the marketing team, to keep it fresh and cool, is something that sets us apart as well, because you don't want to be running the same brand and festival and direction each year, and you've got to be thinking one step ahead of the market. And we've done that really well. And last year we had acts like Dom Dollar and Central C that are now, the top of the industry, and being one step ahead, ensuring that we bring the best talent to the festival is something that keeps the crowd engaged as well.
Yeah. Let's talk about the talent for a bit. This may be like asking a parent to pick their favorite children, or child, but what is your standout act that, not from a commercial perspective, but just from a went and saw them and was just blown away? This is my favorite.
At R&V?
Yeah.
Pendulum Live is still pretty iconic with the festival. The production team had to work their ass off to get that show together, and it was like a split stage, LED wall around the drum kit, this heavy guitar music mixed with the bass music. It's almost that ultimate Kiwi sound, right?
Yeah.
With a MC screaming and Rob Swire there on that, futuristic kind of pulsing guitar.
Yeah.
I think when we had that shot, Rhythm and Vines, and even, just knowing that the production team worked day and night to deliver that was a benchmark that arguably hasn't been quite beaten yet. I mean, Empire of the Sun was another huge production. And every year we're trying to, grow the show in terms of LED and pyro and moving parts. But I think some of those bigger live acts that we've had stand out to me.
Yeah.
How much of the show is now about, in the early days it would have been about getting the individual artist, right? Getting that kind of headline act, bringing them in.
Yep.
How much of it, I think about it, and I'm not a huge music guy. I didn't go to see an artist. I went because it's Rhythm and Vines, and I went because it was my mates who wanted to go. What is it where is that split in terms of, just that iconic moment that lots of Kiwis have to go through versus we have to get these big names to come through the door?
Yeah, I think there's an element of trust. I mean, we've got a good reputation. People trust us to deliver, the leading artists and the best production. And a good sign of that or vote of confidence is the fact we sell out a majority of our tickets before the lineup drops. And there's not many festivals in the world that can do that. Glastonbury's one, Coachella as well. People trust the brand to deliver. And we've got ourselves in a position now where punters are saying, look, I don't know some of those artists on the lineup, but hey, I trust these guys because the track record suggests that they've had Calvin Harris and Major Lazer and Dom Dollar. So with the next wave of superstars this year, we've got Ice Spice, we've got Sammy Verges. These are the future headliners of tomorrow that are in the country playing with us. So that's a good vote of confidence. People do want to know what they're getting, and we obviously share the lineup, share the day split. People can work out what artists they want to see. But it's the cart leading the horse a bit, and we like to inspire and lead the market, and not stay stagnant on acts they may or not know.
Yeah. Before we move on, we talk all the time about planning and growing our wealth, but protecting that wealth is just as important. That's why having the right insurance in place can help when life goes unexpectedly.
And that's why this episode is brought to you by Partners Life, a New Zealand operated award-winning insurance provider with over 300,000 Kiwis insured and 89% of claims paid.
Partners Life understand that having some insurance is better than having no insurance. They have flexible and personalized solutions for any budget or situation.
Check out their website in our show notes below.
With the acts, is there any, probably a bit more, I'd say early on, that you're like, we're betting the house on this? And then you're like big swings, big punts you've had to take, and you're like, we're really dialing the risk up here, boys?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, even those first years, and we booked a band, Fat Freddy's Drop, who I knew the family.
I've never heard of them.
I knew their management.
The smiles in the background. You could just hear.
Well, not no one did, but certainly the Rhythm and Vines audience, those Scarfies coming out of Otago, weren't overly familiar with them. But I had a family friend who was involved with the band, and I'd been following their rise. But they hadn't released any music, and they certainly didn't have the profile they did today. But we booked them in April of that year. By the end of the year, they'd cleaned up at the Music Awards. Their album was the biggest selling album in New Zealand's history.
Yeah.
And we had them booked for New Year's Eve.
Oh, amazing.
We had the whole collection of that scene and sound behind them, the Shapeshifters, Cora, Fat Freddy's Drop, Black Seeds. No one had grouped that bunch of artists in one location, and suddenly we had the golden ticket, and that's what really set us apart. So that was one iconic signing. Tiny Temper we spoke about earlier.
Good. He's my two favorite acts I've seen at RMV: Tiny Temper and Moby.
Yeah. Good taste.
Yeah.
Tiny Temper we got offered at the last minute because we tried to book De La Soul.
Oh, yeah.
And they declined, but the agent said, I've got this new act, Tiny Temper, that and I'd heard through some record industry sources, I'd heard his name, and so we booked him for a nominal fee. And then the next week he was on stage at Glastonbury with Snoop Dogg.
Yeah.
And again, by the end of the year, his wave of music hit New Zealand. And I remember he was blown away by the crowd that year because here he was on the other side of the world, and the whole audience singing his songs back to him.
Yeah. That was an absolutely, just for me, iconic R&B
You weren't that guy
moment.
up in the tree, were you?
No, not me. I was down front. Yeah,
Michael Possum Vincent? No, definitely not.
It was that and Moby, because I remember watching Moby, and he came out and played he came out and was like, I used to be in no one knows this. I used to be in a punk band, and proceeded to play like half of a punk song basically, and then dropped it straight into his headline track, and I was just like, this is something else. Yeah.
Well, Moby was probably a break from the programming we'd been quite in that dub scene and drum and bass scene, and then we brought this legend Moby and all his musical sensibilities to the festival, and it's something we've tried to do. We're really trying to be a bit of something for everyone. This year we've got bands like Dope Lemon playing, we've got Kiwi acts like Saatchi, we've got the bass music like Lude, and so something for everyone, and keep it diverse. And a legend like Moby is something it'd be hard to repeat that.
Yeah.
Hamish, I want to get into you've come to talk to a couple of financial advisors, right? I want to start talking about the financial elements. Let's talk about Gisborne as a community.
Yeah.
So I'm keen to hear, like, one, when you first rolled into Gisborne, were they excited to see you? Were they like, what the hell is this? And then can you just talk us in terms of, the financial impact that Rhythm and Vines has had to Gisborne over the years?
Yeah. So Gisborne was, and certainly in my eyes, a sleepy little surf town. It's at the end of the road. It's a very pleasant town, nice wineries, beautiful surf, lovely people, but it's not quite the summer destination for young Kiwis that it is today. So when we first pitched our idea to Rhythm and Vines to the council and to the police, they didn't want to have anything to do with it. Police said, look, we're too busy down at the town clock. And I think the locals used to throw bottles at the town clock, so it was quite a scene down there.
Yeah.
And actually that first year, the police didn't actually attend Rhythm and Vines. They left us to it. And soon the waves of Kiwis started to come into town, and B-dub campgrounds were set up at the beach, which was 10 to 13,000 Kiwis down there. So you can think of the economic impact and coming into the city. So we did a COVEC report in those buoyant years when I think the fest was at 30,000 people. That additional FPOS transactions in the region was 12 million for that period. So you think of the Pack and Save doing a roaring trade, people
Cafes.
buying bottles, buying cartons of Double Brown hand over fist to drag into their campsites. McDonald's was the highest turnover in the country. I think we still hold the record when the buses would get dropped off in Gisborne, near the Gisborne McDonald's. It was, lines out the door there. Burger King ran out of cups. BP ran out of pies, ran out of petrol at one stage. So this was like a real, the town was turned over inside out. And as a result of those transactions, the money coming into town, they say that the dollar gets spent 3 or 4 times and maintained in that economy. So we were told a $48 million economic impact to the Gisborne region from Rhythm and Vines.
Yeah, that's huge. And I think that's something that can't really be understated, is the economic impact of bringing that many people, that much money, the transactions into a community like Gisborne. And, Gisborne is a far cry from what it was 20 years ago now, if you think about it and if you knew it. Yeah, that is phenomenal. Yeah.
And even the little side hustles that would pop up, the taxi
I've
services.
seen some of those side hustles.
The taxi services, with the bros and the ute and the van and the $10
Yep.
to town and back. The phone charging services.
Yeah.
Some locals have offered up showers to campers. And all the local contractors that we use as well, the waste contractors, the clearing the toilet. I think we spend $300,000 clearing the waste from site,
Wow.
day in, day out. Bringing in the volunteers, bringing in the school groups and the fundraisers to pick up the rubbish every day, dismantling the tents and giving them to Salvation Army. Things like that over the years have really kept Rhythm Vines attached to the local economy. And we noticed at the year that we had a year off recently for the COVID vaccination period. We weren't able to reach the levels down in Gisborne that the government required. So Rhythm and Vines had to have a break. And, the number of locals that missed, not just the money, but the cultural impact of having young New Zealanders in the town. And I think, it's led to putting Gisborne on the map. People want to go down there for other holidays and other weekends. Other people have moved down to that part of the country. So you can't underestimate the cultural impact as well.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about like the pimply 16-year-old at Macca's when just these hordes of
18,
people.
James? Oh,
yeah,
no.
when these hordes of people just rolling through for all these hunger busters and be like, oh no, please no. I want to jump to the COVID period's really interesting, which I hadn't even thought about from a festival perspective. I mean, there's probably no industry that would be more impacted than festivals, right? If you can't have people near each other. What was that period like for you?
It was pretty turbulent because no one really knew, how in any industry, no one knew that, how this thing would end. But I think in our industry, we were we supported the government's initiatives quite closely. 2 shots for summer. If you want to attend events like Rhythm and Vines, get the jab. And we really got behind that initiative. And it was a bit of a kick in the guts when, come December, these vaccination rates in places like Gisborne weren't able to be met. And it was really unfortunate we couldn't run the event when down the road in Hawke's Bay, they could. So it was, it was a little bit disappointing. I know areas like Northland were the same, and Northern Base couldn't go ahead. And it was just a shame for young New Zealanders, I remember that summer, that had worked hard to support the government's initiatives. We'd done all the lockdowns, we'd followed all the rules, and we still couldn't have this summer holiday with our mates. We all had a year off, and gave us a chance to do some events in other parts of the country. And we set up the Golden Run, which was a series of concerts in places like Blenheim and Waihi and Auckland. And we still got to do some business, but it was disappointing to have that year off. But there was some shining light. The government had that event fund, which ensured that contractors could be paid and their business didn't lose money. So that was a fantastic initiative from Stuart Nash to allow us to continue to push the event right till the limit and keep people engaged until the point where we couldn't. And we were able to bring in some acts into the quarantine system over that time, the Wilkinsons and Netsky, and those guys did the hard yards of doing the 10-day quarantine, popped out into this utopia and had the time of their lives. So
we couldn't get rid of Netsky.
No.
It's been around for ages. Yeah.
And at one stage, that first year of lockdown, and Rhythm and Vines was one of the only festivals in the world to go ahead, and it was quite a Kiwi-focused lineup, of course, but people from all over the world were watching us on the live stream, and acts like Benny and Shapeshifter and Dave Dobbin were able to get some exposure around the world.
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's talk a little bit about the, you mentioned in terms of the 300 grand for the cost of Portaloo. Let's talk about some of the other overheads for R&D, because people just probably think, I pay for my ticket, you guys pay some artists, it's as simple as that. But there must be a hell of a lot of costs that go into it outside of the artists.
Yeah, and I think one thing we've done really well is reinvest in the venue. Anyone that's been there knows that it's a real special place, and we compare it to Augusta or Wimbledon, and it's this this iconic event venue that at one time of the year gets dressed, gets mowed, gets manicured, and gets tidied up to host this world-class event. And our team are down there now, from Labour Weekend onwards. We're putting the new limestone roads down. We're putting new vines in. We spent 50 grand on new vines every summer to ensure that the canopies are grown over the campgrounds and to ensure it looks pristine for the photos, to ensure every corner is weedette. There's probably one festival that I've been to, Tomorrowland, where I noticed the aesthetics. Every lamppost and every rubbish bin is manicured, and it's something we strive towards at Rhythm and Vines. We've always tried to avoid the blue and white striped marquees from the higher centre. We want everything needs to be in theme. The Portaloos need to be water blasted down. So we take a real pride in investing in the venue. So lots of expenditure towards that. As I said earlier, the wastewater is just one contract. We spend a lot on security as well. So over $700,000 on security. And we've got a record that is unparalleled with events in the country. The punters are well behaved, they stay in their lane and they have fun, but everyone's there to have a good time and respect their neighbours. And our security teams ensure that. They ensure the safety of the mosh pit. They ensure the safety of the stage and all the equipment. So having those experts we bring down from Auckland and we engage local groups is a huge investment that I think other festivals don't make, and it shows. We spend a lot on the native planting as well, and we give back to the local community, ensuring that that the investment in punters coming to town is left in some form. So native planting around the venue and up the coastline is one investment we make. But there's so many costs to putting this event together, and you think of just acquiring the client or the customer back through the marketing, through the investing in talent, through the sponsorship, through to the delivery of the event and setup, the production, the staging, the security, the event management. It's certainly a big business.
The Augusta Wimbledon comparison, I really
It really rings true. And then so we've kind of run through basically, the start of the event, how it got started, some of the costs and everything. Where is it sitting at today? What's the kind of the state of play for R&V in terms of numbers, the company, and what do you think is next?
Well, I think now is quite a good snapshot of where we're at, because it is, it's a tough time economically, and people don't have the spending habits they've had in the past, and it's I think it's an honour to the history of the festival and where it stands that Rhythm and Vines is still sustainable. People are still buying tickets; they're committing to it. It's that rite of passage. It's that that commitment that people will make if they've only got a limited spending power. Rhythm and Vines is at the top of the list, and our tickets are well ahead of other years. We're up around the 20,000 tickets for this year's event, heading towards a sellout. So it just shows you the brand's strong.
Yep.
People are willing to invest, and it's $1,000 weekend for some of these kids. Not just the ticket, the camping. You've got to have food and beverage for those days. You've got to have the transport to get down there. The fast food and the supplies along the way. So it's not a cheap experience, and if people can commit in this climate, it just shows you we're in a good place. We got some fantastic partnerships with Live Nation now. They're one of the leading entertainment companies in the world, and they've invested into the business. They've been fantastic at bringing in more strategic sponsorship partners like beverage partners, like media partners, and help keep the event sustainable. They've invested in things like staff and production, and ensuring that the festival is as good as it's presented across the world here in New Zealand. We've got a loyal team that continues to work on the festival year in, year out, and you can't beat that experience of people that know the venue and know the agents and know the marketing channels. So I think as a business, it's quite robust. If we can get through this period and these tough few years, we're going to be heading towards our 25-year anniversary and beyond.
Awesome.
What was that like, the Live Nation partnership? Like a couple of lads starting this thing and then it becoming, a business of that size, getting involved was, it must have been like such a big change and a big moment for you.
Yeah, it was. And we did have big goals from the start. I think it was meant to be a 1-year summer project, but we sat on the bank that first year and we saw the magic of this venue come alive. And I remember we were thinking our dream lineup would be Ben Harper, Groove Armada, and the Black Eyed Peas, who were one of the hot bands at the time.
Yeah.
And we could picture it. We didn't know how the hell we were going to get there. We were 21 years old. But we had a vision of the venue full with world-class production and world-class artists. And it's been a real commitment to get to those levels. And, I've had to sacrifice a lot of things from travel overseas to relationships to, being down and out, living on friends' couches, through to losing money to making money. But 22 years, we've stuck with it. And in time, you find the right minds that can help build your dream. And those initial years, we got our parents on board to build the dream. We got on some top leading contractors that had worked on the big day out in Splore. We brought on some agencies, and we started to build this team around us that kind of helped believe our vision. And we worked through the industry, and we were, top industry professionals in the country. We soon got some top industry festival producers in to help us with things like, how do we run a multi-day festival? How do we bring artists in with charter flights and visas? How do we run a 72-hour festival with staff working on stages around the clock? And started to build our international reputation. And finally, as a result, we caught the interest of Live Nation, who was, they own 100 festivals around the world, and they had already started to acquire some products in Australia, the likes of Splendour in the Grass and Falls Festival, and we were able to be their first acquisition in New Zealand. And having their vote of confidence in our vision was, almost that top of the mountain. And now having their support to bring in the top artists and bring in the top production just shows you that you stick with something long enough and you believe in it and you get the right people on board, that anything's possible.
Nice. Fun one to finish with. Lost and Found at Rhythm and Vines.
Yeah.
There must be some good stuff that you found over the years.
Oh, it's always, I think, I'm never there to clean up on the first, but the team tell me that there's all sorts of paraphernalia that's left. A lot of blow-up sex dolls, actually. So
Really?
whether they're there for...
Jimmy, you lost yours a couple of years ago.
Mate, you beat me to the joke. Yeah, it was right there to take.
The production team's like, stop.
Yeah.
One of the more funny internal stories was a lad last year who'd thought his car was stolen, couldn't find it for the life of him in the car park, jumped on his on the bus back to Wellington to get home. When all along it was right where he left it.
One solitary car left in the car park at the end of it. I love it.
Bus ride.
I've actually
Filing police reports and all.
I've done Baywatch without a tent. I remember that's probably, I left my buddy in Auckland.
Yeah.
I was meant to give him a lift down. He was just stuffing around. I had to get going. So we took the car down and I had a tent and I set it up. I mean, he arrived like 4 hours after us. He walked straight in, lit my tent on fire, burnt it to the ground like 4 hours into Baywatch. I did an entire Baywatch like 4 or 5 days without tent. Yeah, it was pretty punishing.
But yeah, I mean, we used to have a lot of tents left over, and
Yeah.
Kiwis would just leave their, $30 warehouse tents. But we're now moving the festival towards a more sustainable angle where we've set up 3,000 of our own tents.
Awesome.
Book a tent. So for people like yourselves that aren't as so organised or way inclined with setting up tents, come down. Your campsite's ready for you. And I can see this part of the festival growing, and potentially at one stage in the future we may have, up to 80%, 100% of the tents ready to go, and we can reuse them year in, year out, and save that wastage.
The immediate thought I have, Hamish, is you'd want a good bond on that tent.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing how
you want a good you want to be able to disinfect them pretty.
Just the hose, with the.
It is amazing how right at the start you said when we're sitting on the bank with our mates, we want this to be a premium offering compared to some of those other festivals. And when you look at the direction of that, where you can book your own tent, it's I'm not saying it's glamping, but something similar. It's amazing how that kind of that theme of we want this to be a premium offering has carried all the way through, and you can still see that today.
Yeah, thank you. And I think even things like your fizzy cocktails or your food offerings, and we've tried to avoid that low rent. We're not an A&P show. We're not the Speedway. We want it to be aspirational, and we want people to turn up there and behave in a world-class manner, and put New Zealand on the map. And it's certainly got a reputation amongst artists and media and visitors that, hey, we've got it as good in New Zealand as anywhere around the world.
It must be pretty bloody cool for you to think about all of the amazing memories that you've had an involvement in for all of these years, the impact on the Gisborne community, and just as simple as what do you do, Hamish? And you're like, I'm the co-founder of Rhythm and Vines, and people's reaction must be like, that's pretty bloody cool.
Yeah, no, it is cool. We always laughed about when you go into customs and what you write on the customs form. And we call ourselves dreamweavers sometimes because we do create this amazing experience for Kiwis. And it sure beats being a lawyer, and that's what one career path would have been, and solving other people's problems. And I remember at the start of my career I thought, well, I might use my skills and my education to solve my own problems, and hasn't been easy along the way. And it's been a huge team effort from lots of people to create this festival, but I'm glad that I've stuck with it and that the team stuck with it to create this lasting legacy for the country.
I'm just thinking, what did your parents say when you were you got a law degree and they were you've spent 5 years, all this money, and you're I'm going to shoot over with my mates to Gizzy and organize some artists? They must have been what the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
I think it was more telling the family friends what Hamish was up to.
Yeah.
Mum's Daniel's a dentist, and so-and-so's an accountant, but what do we tell people that you're doing?
Fat Freddy's something or other? Yeah.
And
it's
because
events,
entrepreneurship and events is such a slow burn.
Yeah.
It's hard to produce those results. And it probably wasn't until 5 years in where I could sit at the dinner table with my grandparents and explain and show them what I'd been working on.
Yeah.
And that's some advice I give to anyone out there is just stick with it, and there will be naysayers, and there will be family that are concerned and friends about your journey, but it will make sense. It'll take time, and you'll be able to show people your vision come to life at some stage.
Amazing.
Yeah. It's the entrepreneurship thing, right? Like they're always right in terms of, what you're doing until they're wrong.
Yeah.
And when they're wrong, they're very wrong. So congratulations
Yeah,
for what you
amazing.
built. And thank you for sharing the financials side and helping us do something cool where we're still talking about money, but we're talking about it from a festival perspective.
Thank you. Hope it's been insightful, and appreciate the interest.
Awesome. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for listening to this episode. Much love to Partners Life for sponsoring the episode. Please subscribe to the channel, give us a review, give us a like, and we'll catch you next time.
And chuck your best Baywatch experiences in the comments.